Hello, everyone, and welcome to Keep Six Empowerment to Unlock the Justice System. Today, we have our one and only Jordana Goldlist and also Broderick. Broderick is here to give his point of view and this important topic we're going to be discussing today about bail reform and the tough on crime policies. Jordana, thank you so much again for coming by. We haven't had a discussion for the year. This is our first discussion for the year. So we're going to kick this off really inspirational one today for this important topic. Jordana, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your wonderful law firm, and you continue to fight for individuals in our community.
Thank you. Hi, Rich. It's so nice to see you. This is our first chat of the year, but we've been doing this year after year. I think we're in year 6 or 7 right now, and it's really incredible to see where you have taken the Keep Six organization. You keep it going, trying to educate people on some of the disparities between what is in the media and what is actually happening on the ground. And I can tell you it's much appreciated because there is a huge discrepancy between what people think. So for those who don't know, I'm Jordana Goldlist. I'm the owner of JHG Criminal Law. I've been practicing in criminal defense now for coming up on 14 years with a focus on street-level crime, mostly homicide offenses, firearm offenses, drug trafficking offenses. And so to talk about bail reform and tough on crime policies, especially with an organization so focused on gun crime, super important. People are not understanding what's really happening in the courts. They're reading the media. They think the media is an accurate reflection of what's happening. And although there are some reporters out there that are trying their best to sift through the nonsense, the reality is generally people aren't getting the right message. So hopefully we're able to break through that in today's conversation.
Thank you so much. And I really hope so, because this is very a topic that I think a lot of our community is misled on from the media. Broderick, thank you so much for joining us. I know this is your first time coming, and I really appreciate you coming in to give your personal insight on this topic. Maybe you can introduce yourself also to our audience.
I'm Jerry Broderick's. I was once a client of Jordana. um, I've been through the system myself, so I'm glad I'm able to join this podcast or this live stream to be able to share light on what's going on in today's justice system, and hopefully we can get the message out there, and somebody out there can use that message to better themselves in the future.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So let's just cut to the chase right now and get straight to the point. Jordana,
Yes.
we've been hearing a lot lately about individuals. What is it called? Catch and release.
Yes.
Within the justice system. Give us an insight from your point of view, because you're in the courts. I think 6 days a week, maybe 7. What's really behind all of this here? What's really happening in the courts?
So, first of all, bail is a constitutional right of anyone who's arrested. As a starting point, everyone should be released on bail. Absolutely, if they're charged with a criminal offense, because our justice system is premised on the notion that anyone who is arrested is innocent unless and until the Crown proves them guilty. So what you have is a system of bail in which people who are presumed to be innocent should not be detained. That should always be the starting point. And so when we have politicians and commentators that, harping on this, catch and release system as though that's derogatory. No, that's actually philosophically correct. That said, there are some people who commit some offenses over and over and over again who become a danger, who pose a threat to society or to the justice system itself. And that's really the premise upon which people are being held in custody. And so it's always this balancing act between protecting someone's rights to be released and the rights of society and members of society to be safe. And that's always sort of the balancing act of the judge. But what's actually happening in the courts, especially when it comes to gun crime, is this policy in which a person is automatically detained and they have to prove why they should be released. And so what we're seeing more and more as the practical reality for anyone charged with firearm offenses for anyone charged with, even like medium quantities of fentanyl or heroin or cocaine, is this notion that they are detained unless they can prove otherwise. And so before we got started, we were chatting a little bit. I'm seeing guys now with no criminal records, no other outstanding charges, who are not committing otherwise violent offenses, but who, for nothing other than being in possession of a firearm, if they are released, they're released on such restrictive bail conditions that it actually hinders their ability to be productive members of society. So guys are coming out on house arrest with ankle monitors. Very significant sums of money are being pledged in order to secure their release. And I mean, these are people who, for one reason or another, are carrying firearms, not necessarily using them in the community, not posing a threat, and have absolutely no history of committing violent offenses. That's what's really appearing in the courts. And so we're in a position where, one, the go-to should be the release of everyone. And I can tell you this is a problem in Ontario far more often than it is out west. When I deal with people in Alberta, when I've dealt with people in Manitoba, their starting position is let's release. Let's as long as they've got a place to go and, depending on the severity of the case, someone to watch over them. They do their bail hearings immediately from the police station, often by phone. It's a much more efficient system than what we have here in Ontario. But this notion of just catch and release and our city is being overrun by people on bail who continue to commit crimes really isn't reflective of what's happening on the ground.
Thank you. And just to add to that, I would like to say, when we're looking at bail and individuals that are detained or in custody, would it be fair to say the percentage of them are from the marginalized community or from the BIPOC, community?
Absolutely. Now, not, I don't want to say only. I've got plenty of people from more affluent communities who are, in custody, but by and large, it's much easier for people who aren't from marginalized communities to put together a solid bail plan. When you can get 2 or 3 sureties to come and put $1 million on the table, and mom doesn't have to work because dad's out working and mom and dad are still together living in the same home, it's really easy to put a more solid plan together than if you have someone, for example, who comes from a single parent household where that one parent has to work and no one's available to supervise, but that individual has responsibilities in the home, looking after younger siblings, maybe going to work, that require more lenient bail conditions in order to function within society.
Right. And I recalled maybe a couple months ago, our premier made a national remark or a statement out of fairness to say that he's going to build more jails and lock them up and throw away the key and so forth. Now, with that said, we as a society, I mean, even when individuals are locked up, even people who are charged with murder, sooner or later they have to be released and they'll be back out in the community. My concern, even from his remarks, was the fact that he should spend that money more on mental health and reintegration, not trying to build more jails or lock them up and throw away the key, as he puts it.
And I mean, leaving aside reintegration, imagine, and from a financial perspective, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm fiscally conservative. There's no question. So let's talk about that in numbers, right? In Canada, you cannot be arrested before the age of 12. We know that it costs around $100,000 to $120,000 per federal inmate per year. Imagine if you took that same $120,000 that you would spend locking someone up and put that towards the type of programming, education, employment, social services, trauma counseling, everything that we know an individual needs to avoid the criminal justice system in the first place. That same amount of money you put towards someone before the age of 12. And instead of creating someone who's going to end up in the criminal system, they avoid the criminal system and end up being a contributing member of society who's actually going to pay taxes. You don't even have to actually spend more money. You just move the money from the back end to the front.
Yes, yes, that's so true. Um, Jerry, you, as you outlined to us, you was a client and you went through the system yourself. Now, what is your take, even regarding this here, when it comes to bail reform, and even from your own lived experience? Because those are the important things that we have to look at.
Well, for me, I believe the justice system itself is not designed for any individual to win. Um, Basically, they, like Jordana said, they need to have programs and stuff that can help individuals that's trying to reintegrate back into the community. Certain individuals, like, like Jordana said, also there are individuals like who come from single parent home, and a lot of them are dealing with issues that they don't know how to properly communicate with family members and stuff. So they need to be some sort of like maybe therapy or something, some place where they can go and share, like have somebody who's been through the same type of situation or maybe worse that they can relate to and help them, right? So I
Right,
feel like the justice system, like I said, it's really a money thing, to be honest. But there are some people who, sad to say, do deserve to be locked up, and there are some individuals that make mistakes, and I feel like it's not about locking people up and just letting them stay there, and eventually, like you said, they're going to come out eventually after doing their time, right? But they need to put in place like jobs. Nowadays you come out, you have restrictions. You can't get a job because you have a criminal record. Places don't. They need to like try to open up certain little doors that would allow individuals to feel normal again. And especially being on parole, there's so many restrictions. Imagine going to a job interview and you have an ankle bracelet on. Let's say somebody who just got bailed yesterday with restrictions and ankle monitor, and you're trying to go get a job. No place is going to want to hire you.
right.
So I feel like there are some things that they could change and put in place just to help, especially the young individuals. Nowadays, it's the younger generation that's doing a lot of things outside, and it's clear that obviously they don't have what they need to, help them. It's somehow, somewhere, I'm sure they're crying for help, but the system is not seeing or understanding it. They're just seeing it from their own perspective and looking at the news and seeing what's going on and just taking actions from there.
Yes, I think that the climate we're in right now, um, what the way the system has been laid out have not been working, and I think we have to look. They have to start looking at different avenues to deal with employment. I see guys that have gone through the Keep Six program. As a matter of fact, our gangster tuition program ran, and I think we have not had one person that had gone back to jail that went through the program. We have a zero incident rate. And keep in mind, we are supporting individuals all the time. Even when they're finished the program, they still have that connection with us, right? From employment to mental health to address these issues. So, with that said, these are key components I feel that is needed that have to be looked at. And until our government starts looking at it and making changes, we continue in the same box. Jordana, one of the things for regarding this whole issue, when you as a lawyer and you're in the court and you're fighting, everyone knows how hard you go for your clients. And with that said, how do you feel when you are seeing these individuals? How do you deal with it emotionally? Because I mean, I've known you for years, and you're very close to individuals. How do you manage?
I mean, it's hard. It's, one of the hardest parts about it is dealing with people who see clients only for their criminal record, only for their criminal charges, and working with people for years. I mean, I'm in an awkward situation. Jerry and I go back a very long time, and I know the family at this stage, so I don't want to disclose too much, and I don't want to breach confidentiality without his permission. But
No,
I
go
get
ahead.
I get to know people, like I really do. I spend that time. For me, it was always important. A lot of my clients have, I've been helping them, helping their kids. I've helped generations. I've had certain families that I've represented 3 generations try to get out of the justice system. And so you get to know people through the course of representing them. And I understand what circumstances have led them into the system. And, oftentimes it has absolutely nothing to do with who they are as people, right? It's not about someone who's a bad person. And Jerry said earlier, there are some people who deserve to be locked up. There are some people who are just hardwired to hurt people. We know that. Psychologically, there are people who are, they enjoy hurting people. They enjoy causing harm. But those people are such a small percentage of those that are in jail. The majority of people are in jail because of circumstances they found themselves placed in, which are often related to how the system itself functions. And so we need to be able to break that cycle. And so me personally, I have a really great ability to compartmentalize where I don't let my emotions run out on me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do my job in the court. If I was up there getting angry or getting sad, no one's listening to that. But oftentimes I'd like to, I'd like to scream, like, you don't know what this man has done for his family. You don't know what he's done for the community. Like, there are things that I can't say, quite frankly, because I can't give evidence to the court. I just have to make an argument based on what has been said. And so it gets difficult, but if I don't put that aside and make those pitches and make those arguments and get to know people, I feel like I do a disservice to them. So it's really about, for me, giving back and fighting. And the saddest and hardest part for me is, and has always been, winning a case for someone that didn't make bail. At least when I've made sure to secure bail for someone and then win, those 2 years fighting, even if they were compromised by bail conditions, they weren't at a loss. They weren't separated from their family, their kids. They, oftentimes could still work. But, we have people, and that's something that this whole tough on crime policy supporters don't seem to recognize, is that there are people who are wrongfully accused. There are people who are arrested that are never going to be convicted. In the last month, we've watched through the media, 2 individuals who were charged with murder. One of them get completely acquitted in the face of police testimony that was contradicted by the Crown's own expert. That man sat in jail for months, but he could have sat in jail for the entire time if he wasn't an accountant with a good family and good financial support that would allow him to have the plan he needed to get out of jail. And the second guy, he had his charges withdrawn after 28 months of fighting. And so we have 2 individuals in the last month wrongfully accused of committing Canada's worst crime, that, but for the fact that they received bail, would have spent 2.5, 3 years in custody waiting for their day in court, only to be acquitted. And then what?
It's very sad. I had the opportunity of watching that situation with that, and I will say my heart, just went out to him and his family, because and after that experience, I definitely feel that him, and his family has to go through some real psychological therapy and stuff like that. Just, because there's trauma, and we always have to remember, when it comes to these situations, we might look at them like, well, it's just another day, we'll be okay. But it's something that we carry within us, and we continue to pass it on, right? And that's one of the things that we have to look at within the system. A lot of individuals, or not a lot, but there's a good portion of individuals that has gone through the system or got caught up in the system, and they're not bad people. It's just bad decisions, and those bad decisions led them. But what has happened to them is that when they were able to overcome or finish that situation that they were going through, they weren't able to deal with the pain and anguish within themselves, right? Which they've carried on, and that ended up going back into the system again. And that is a big, big part, I find, that individuals, and we have to look at, that whole mental thing, because once a person goes in, it's a totally different world. And no matter how lightly you think it is something that people have to deal with, and we have to look at how to address it. So when you're talking about bail reform and toughen crime, it's much more feasible to invest in making these individuals better citizen and individuals that are able to contribute to society, more than making it a business within the system. That's just how I see it. Um, Jerry, what's your take, on it? Even going through and dealing with parole and so forth.
For me per se, like it was my first time actually going to the penitentiary. I know it wasn't a lot. It wasn't a long sentence. It was a 3 year sentence, but still 3 years of my life being taken away from my family. And honestly, like, wrong place, wrong time, mistakes are made. People make wrong decisions, but going through a place like that, going through a situation like that, a place where you've never been,
Right,
there's no manual book that tells you this is how it's gonna go. You can try to prepare yourself mentally, emotionally. If it doesn't, once they lock you up, best believe every single emotion that you've been trying to hold is going to come out when you're in that cell by yourself, which happened for me.
right,
So, I mean, it wasn't easy, it wasn't tough, and this is something I believe that, that most of these young individuals need to understand, that going to jail is one thing and getting bailed is another, but going to the penitentiary, that's like the last bus stop. You're either stuck there for life or you're going to do a significant amount of time. And it doesn't matter how much time you do, it's not an experience that anybody should, you know, want to go through. It changes you. It's like
right,
a whole different world in there, like you said. Um, some people come out for the best, some people come out for the worst. For me, thank God, like, even though I went through that situation, with family support, of course, and everything else, and having just that strong mindset that this is not where I want to be, and this is not where I see myself,
right,
and coming back out and being on parole, that alone itself is just so draining. And like, for some people, I don't know, like they need help, so I feel like the government should actually find ways to help these individuals and not just like provide the bare minimal jobs. you
right,
know the bare minimal jobs is not going to help them, and then you have the PO that's breathing up their behind, excuse my French, that's want to know how you're getting your funds and this and that and the third. So it's stressful. So it takes a strong person to be able to get over going through a situation like that. So for me, I feel like, what, it's not something that I would want anybody to go through, but it's yeah. It was hell. So for me, I don't think it's a place that anybody should go. And when you come home, it's very hard to start over.
right,
Especially when you're not dealing with probation, you're dealing with PO, like parole office, and the parole system, and it's a whole different ballgame versus anything else. So I feel like people need to think twice.
yeah,
I know people make mistakes out here, but think twice on the type of mistakes you make in life, because sometimes there are some mistakes that even Jordana can't save you from it, and she's one of the best lawyers out there.
Well, to be
So
clear, it wasn't me that sent you to the pen. So let's
no,
just clear that up. That was not my case.
no, it wasn't you,
There.
but I just had to put that up.
You and I have a very, very clear record, actually.
Yeah.
But I think one of the biggest misunderstandings is, and first of all, Jerry, it broke you. You were already a little bit older than a lot of the guys that are doing their first pen bits right now. And
Yeah.
I think that makes a huge difference because you were already very strong, very mature. You knew who you were when you were going in, and you also had a family that was very supportive behind you. So you had something amazing to sort of keep you up, prop you up, keep you going. I'm seeing a lot of people who are really young, 19, 20, 21, 22, they're carrying guns. They don't realize that, even on a first offense firearm possession, you can go to the pen. It's something the Crown is likely to ask for. They want 2 to 3 years on a first offense as a standard sort of position. And if you're using that gun, you're looking at 4 or 5, 6 years, depending on, what occurs. And that's assuming that nobody ends up killed. So we've got people who are really, really young that don't realize the consequences of their actions, even to make those mistakes, because they end up in my office and they're like, okay, so what's my worst case scenario if I get convicted? And when I say, you're facing a pen sentence here, they're floored. They don't appreciate that. Like, there's a huge discrepancy between what people think could happen and what can actually happen. And I wonder if, the media's talk of this catch and release system is making people truly believe they can just commit crime easily and get away with it without problem. And, obviously, we defense lawyers do our best to make sure that people are secure, but there are certain situations people get themselves into, especially with their use of the cell phones these days, that really put them in a precarious position, and they don't even appreciate what those consequences are, which is quite frankly frightening.
Yeah, and that is so true. One of the things that came to mind is that I wanted to ask, how can policymakers balance the need of accountability and public safety? That's something that we have to look at from a larger picture. And because the policymakers are the individuals who are one of the ones when it comes to the changes and moving forward to address these things.
They have to do what, people like Louis March have been screaming about for 20 years. And it's not complicated. We've all been saying the same thing. You need to address the root causes. If you don't address the root causes of criminal behavior, listen, you're never going to stop crime 100%. We know that. But we're talking about the guys who get caught up in these, situations that could otherwise be making other choices for themselves if they had the, proper supports in school, at home, if they had trauma counseling, if they weren't, in a position where they're leaning into gang lifestyle in order to, find themselves the sense of security that they would otherwise receive if, for example, they could play sports, if they could engage in other pro-social activities. Like, we know exactly what is needed. Just the government has to get on board to fund these things, A, in a meaningful way, and B, in a long-term way. I don't think there's a Band-Aid solution here. I think that we're talking about solutions that are going to take at least a generation, if not two, to actually see a difference. But if we don't start moving the needle, like, I don't know, everyone I speak to right now is calling Toronto Gotham City. Like, we are not okay right now. Like, what is happening on our streets is not okay. We are heading in a very dangerous direction between, guns and carjackings and robberies and home invasions. Like, at some point, people have to start addressing the underlying causes if they want a real meaningful solution, because locking people up for 3, 4, 5 years, we know on a 6-year sentence, they're getting out. Available paroles in 2 years, and they're getting out in 4. So now you've sent someone in their 20s to arguably the most violent environment in Canada, and you're expecting what? And I think that's the problem with these tough on crime policies. Like, it's
and even to say that, one of the other things I have to address is what role can some community-based organization and grassroots movement play in advocating for meaningful bail reform and challenge the justice system? Because that is one of the things I think when we're looking at it, a lot of times individuals that are in the field, they don't have a voice and they have no direction on how to navigate these situations. Even the families themselves, right? I've received calls on a Sunday evening where, a mother has called to ask about, her son who's got a call on how to navigate it, right?
It's a real problem. The legal aid system is falling apart. There's no question right now.
It fell apart already.
No, it still exists, but, it's it's a problem. People are not well informed on how to navigate the system. And especially, like you said earlier, people from marginalized communities are definitely far more compromised when entering the criminal justice system.
Yeah, definitely. And Jerry,
Yeah.
for you now, where do you see us going in the future with our young people? I mean, just the way things are right now, things have been on the rise here. There's a lot of younger individuals who are going in, getting caught up in the system. We have to look at that. And then we have to start looking at even what's going on in the United States, because keep in mind, it trickles over to us too, right?
Yeah. Um, I don't know where it's gonna go, but what I can say is that I think that the programs that they installed in the penitentiary, they
Mm-hmm.
should try to, use that same program to help youths outside. They should have that same program, whether it's in school, whether it's some sort of like center, I don't know, something that it can actually help them, because it's the same program they try to teach people who are over the age of 18, or from 18 to 30. They're trying to like teach them about themselves. I feel like if those programs, because remember, you're able to tell when a kid is not, something is wrong. Obviously you can tell, like, this kid is has certain kind of issues. So if we
Right.
can have these programs put in place that can, help them, teach them, get to the roots of the problem, not just looking at it from the surface, just actually tapping down to the root, so we can actually, I feel like if they install those programs, it would be very, very helpful to a lot of newer age upcoming the generation, especially, and also too, like teaching them about, financial literacy and stuff like that. Those things play a major role, because a lot of these young youths that's coming up, they're seeing everything that's going on in today's world, and they want it, and they want it fast. A lot of people are looking for immediate gratification, and for those reasons they do what they do. And I feel like, if we can somehow put in place, not we, the government, can somehow put in place like certain things like the financial literacy, like the programs that would teach them, like, to learn about themselves, to target what can possibly be a problem in the future. If we can target it from now, I feel like that would be very, very helpful, because it's like, you guys they're providing it in the penitentiary, but why we not doing this outside before, you know
Before they end up in the system.
in the system, and then they have to learn that, and then you guys, they feel like that's what's going to change them. No, if we can start that from when they're smaller, we can actually prevent them from ending in places. But I guess it's really a money thing for them, and only the smart ones would understand that, this is not a joke, it's not a game, and try to change their life around.
And we have a question from Louis March, and he asking us, what percentage of people on bail fulfill their requirements, and how many do not? Well, I don't have any research. Jordana, would you happen to know anything number wise?
I don't have the statistics. I can certainly say it's a majority. I think, at least in my practice, a majority of my clients are getting through their cases without being rearrested. That's for sure, while out on bail. I've had people on bail be so successful that they've started and completed university educations. I've had people who seek and find meaningful employment. I've had clients out on bail who have, gotten married and had kids and are raising, families that are all contributing members of society. So I've seen people make significant life changes while out on bail, which of course is going to help them, in furtherance of their case. And so
Right.
I think it's important. It also helps, solidify a foundation that will allow them to make better choices in the future as well. Going back for a second to what Jerry said, I think financial literacy is so important. I can tell you, it's not even just people in the system. People in general have no idea how to use money. People have no idea how to use credit cards. People have no idea like what's good and bad debt, and it really affects people negatively throughout their lives. So I think financial literacy is super important, but so are things like knowing your rights and responsibilities in the criminal justice system, understanding what the police can and cannot do. You know, people don't understand how they're supposed to function in society if they don't understand the laws that govern in order to make better choices, or at least make bad choices knowing what your bad choices might end up doing to you in the long run, right? When people don't understand what they can and cannot do, I mean, I'm sure people know you can't carry a gun around when you purchase it from your friend in the alley, but knowing that that might lead you to the penitentiary may cause someone to think twice about whether or not that's what they really want to do, because their belief is that, oh, I'm just going to have to do probation if I get caught, and we live in a dangerous society. You know, I think society also has to think about, why do we have a society where 14 and 15-year-old kids feel like they need to carry a gun in order to feel safe? We live in a world where teenagers are carrying guns for their own safety, believing that's what they need. That's frightening, you know, and I think at some point, those that want to get tough on crime should maybe think about why anyone would feel that that's necessary in the world they live in, and address those issues.
Right. And here another question came in. What are the thoughts on the numbers of people who repeatedly break bail?
Thoughts on the, I mean, listen, they exist. I've had clients with ridiculous numbers of breach of bail convictions, you know, like in the dozens, like double digit breach of bail. They cannot at all stick to a plan of bail. They're just not capable. But what we often fail to consider is why. What are these conditions that they're not able to comply with? Because oftentimes they're not necessarily committing other offenses or other substantive crimes, but they're just breaching their bail. So maybe it's someone who needs to hold a nighttime job because they have daytime responsibilities and the court just doesn't care. Maybe it's someone who actually can't stay at home because of the number of people that have to share a home, because they don't have enough money to live in a place that's big enough for the amount of family members that have to share there, and they just have to go for a walk. Like, it's really unfortunate when we don't look at the why behind what people are doing.
Right. And again, I'm a firm believer that a lot of times it has to come down to addressing that mental health, or go within deep of what that person is going through, right?
Mental health
And
addiction. How many drug addicts do we have filtering through the system that are out committing further offenses in furtherance of their addiction because they can't get into rehab? The lineups are so unbelievably long. The wait lists for detox are so unbelievably long. And so we live in a society where people are sort of shaking their finger at someone for being an active addict, but they're not supplying them with the proper resources, or they're giving them, you know, the option of going to rehab for 3 weeks, which accomplishes nothing. There needs to be significant, 6 to 12 month programs where people can actually learn the coping skills they need to avoid any relapse in the future.
right, and also also going to need that wraparound support also afterwards too, right? Don't forget that, because going to a rehab and addressing things, but you still need that wraparound support to continue in your transition, and that's something that's very much important. One of the things I had here, how do we respond to the argument that bail reform could compromise public safety? That was something that came out from the minister.
So, I mean, listen, you're never going to live in a society that's 100% safe, right? There's never been a point in time in which society was violence free. We don't have that. But I think we have to look perhaps at some of the communities in other countries that are far safer and understand what some of those underlying issues are. And oftentimes it's very much connected to poverty. And so
Yes.
societies that have lower concentrations of poverty, people who are better educated, which means better employed in meaningful employment, that they're able to look after their families and are taught, the value of family, the value of hard work. Those are societies that are oftentimes with far less crime. Now, they are often also countries that have far more severe punishments for committing crime, but the public is educated on what those are. So you know that if you're caught trafficking cocaine, you're likely facing a 25-year sentence. Now you have a choice as to whether or not you want to do that. If at the same time you're also offered free education and excellent job training, because otherwise that choice is meaningful. If you're put in a position where all you can do is sell cocaine in order to afford food and electricity and, diapers for your kid, and you're not given other viable options for providing for yourself and your family, you can't be surprised when you choose really the only viable option on the table.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, there are countries who their system is just something out of this world, and their idea of how they operate is nothing compared to what we have here, and so forth. The support they give and everything else. That's how I kind of look at it. But Jordana, with that said, um, you put a lot of time when it comes into your, let's say, your practice, but your clients itself. And with that said, even when you're in the courtroom and fighting for that bail, do you not feel at time that the system itself, I mean, I know it's a business and it's your profession, but do you not feel at time the system itself is just so warped? And what's the sense, like how do we go beyond it and beyond that point?
It is warped for sure for bail. Anyone who knows my practice knows I do not take on any sexual based offenses. I don't do
Right.
it. I never have. It's a policy of mine. There's certain crimes I won't do, and that I don't do sex assault, sexual interference, any of that. I cannot tell you how disturbing it is for me to sit in bail court and watch how many people accused of sexual based offenses are given release on consent, where because they have a good job and because they have a good home and because they're married with 3 kids, they therefore can be very easily released. And I have to fight for, a 19 or 20-year-old kid with no criminal record whose dad isn't around, mom works unbelievably hard trying to take care of all of the kids, but doesn't have the ability to supervise. I have to fight and battle, and sometimes there's nothing you can do to achieve that success for bail, even on someone with no criminal record. And it's awful. It feels terrible knowing that someone was, put in a position or believed because of the environment they're growing up in that they had to make certain choices for their own, safety or well-being. And they're not, causing harm to anyone otherwise.
Right.
They're detained, whereas the sex-based offense is getting out without issue. And we have the same disparity in sentencing that makes me cringe every single time, because obviously I get legal digests and I read about these cases on a regular basis just to keep up with the law. And when I see the sentencing disparities right now between sex-based offenses and drug offenses, especially fentanyl, I can't stand it. We've got, sexual offenders that are getting 2 years less a day in order to keep them in the reformatory because the penitentiary is a dangerous place for them. That, let's protect the pedophile, but let's send, a young man in his 20s to jail for a double-digit sentence because he's caught with, a quantity of fentanyl without any consideration as to why and what circumstances he's coming from.
Yeah, and that's something you brought up, a very important part there. Even within the parole system itself, individuals under that sex offense, they get parole even before the individual who, on a drug charge. And I recall, I don't know, Jerry, if you ever came across it, but there was a parole handbook that was out, and it was helping you to prepare for parole. But in that handbook, it outlined that sex offenders, they weren't criminals.
Wow.
It was a mental health, situation they fall under. And I recall reading it years ago, and it was just disturbing. But Jordana brought up that point, and it's so true. And we have to start looking at things and the unfairness,
And
of
we also
how.
have to look at the harm to society, right? Like the number of drug addicts who have been the victims of sexual assault is
Mhm.
overwhelming. And so we have a system which is penalizing the drug dealer who is essentially supplying some sort of support for a lot of people who cannot cope with the trauma of being sexually abused. And yet the abusers are getting a slap on the wrist and a pat on the back and saying, please don't do this again. And so we're creating a system which is allowing everything criminal to continually perpetuate.
Yeah, I've always said on many different occasions, the word, the system itself that is created, it is working exactly the way they want it to work. I have no doubt in my mind, and I've sat down and looked hard and deep. That system's been around for hundreds of years. The only difference now, we're just in 2024, but it's working, exactly to suppress who it needs to suppress, and and for it to be make a financial gain from whatever level that it operates at, right? And that's just my take on it. And Jerry, anything you'd like to add to that, because you yourself have seen things firsthand?
Um, for me, I just want the government to understand one thing. These young individuals that are out here selling drugs and carrying weapons and stuff. We have to remember one thing. Nobody was ever born into this world and just said, "Hey, I want to be a drug dealer. Hey, I want to carry guns and run around the streets and do the most." No. If you ever walk into a school and you ask young kids, "Hey, what would you like to be?" Some of them want to be lawyers, doctors, scientists, a whole bunch of things. It's just like we said, the environment,
Yeah,
not having certain resources. You ever go to certain neighborhoods and look at the playground? It's so different from going to, a neighborhood that doesn't have much. You know
right.
what I mean? So there's not a lot of resources. There's not a lot of things that can help, even if crimes and stuff is going on in that neighborhood. But there should be, things that's put in place to kind of distract the younger generation that's growing up from there, because I mean, not everybody can afford, especially in today's market when it comes down to rent or whatever the case may be, not everybody can afford it. So fortunately, some people have to grow up in certain environments. I feel like they need to pay more attention to those kind of people and not just neglect them. So, like, with that being said, like I said, they just need to, like, really really find a solution that can help the younger generation coming up, and not just wait till it's almost at its almost, where there's no point of return. That's when they're trying to find a solution. They should start now. Try to find ways that, how can we help, how can we, what can we do to help. And I feel like that would be the thing to help.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I do agree with you on that. We're coming up to our close time. What I would like to ask Jordana, um, for you and many other lawyers that you come across, your colleagues and so forth, um, do you not feel burnt out at time for the fight? Because you, as a lawyer, you just you go and you give your all to your clients, but I mean, how do you manage even to keep your mental health with what you see? You see things firsthand and you hear it firsthand in the courts.
So, I mean, I live my life at extremes, right? My pendulum swings from one extreme to the next. So I go really, really hard at work, and I go. And you're right, it's 7 days a week. I don't shut off. I have clients that will message me from 7 o'clock in the morning until midnight or later. I'll wake up at 6 a.m. and I've got missed messages from, before, like from since I went to bed at midnight. Like there is no point. And I get it. People just, I make myself accessible, and I can't be upset when people message me when they need me. And there's sometimes no control over that, or everyone works on different times. So I have adjusted to that to the best of my ability. I've tried to put some constraints on people, like saying, listen, you have my cell phone. If there's an emergency, use it. Otherwise, like, let's discuss this during the week. If you message me on a Saturday afternoon about something that really isn't urgent, I'll say, like, come on in and see me during the week and we can discuss. So I do try to like manage my time. But I think for me, the key has been, especially in the last few years, I carve out time to take vacations, and I actually have to leave the city and often the country for anywhere from like 5 days to 2 weeks every 3 to 4 months in order to give myself that breathing room, appreciate life, enjoy myself, enjoy another place. Funny enough, I still always keep up with my practice. So every morning I still call my office, make sure everything's okay. I still will respond to text messages of an urgent nature, but I really just try to carve out the time so that I'm either like working all the time or taking a true break from work, that allows me to still, live life and enjoy. As you know, I always find a way to enjoy my time, whether it's cars, art, good meals out. I think that's the balance, is working hard and being able to enjoy life. But those enjoyments in life make me want to keep working hard, and that's the point that I think people need to find that balance. I know lawyers that, they just want to do things sort of on a medium scale. And I get that, especially those with family. Not having kids makes it easy for me to work as hard as I do and travel the way that I do. So I just think that it's all of us are just trying to find a way to do what we know needs to be done, right? Because if no one's fighting for anyone in the system's going to swallow everybody.
Yeah.
That's the reality. If there was not defense lawyers, and there's a lot of us out there who are doing really good work, and if we weren't there, there's no question in my mind that nobody would come through this system whole.
Right. Yeah, that is true. And thank you so much for that, because I can actually say that, and I want to thank you personally. Over the years, I've learned a lot from you when it comes to balancing, because I was a person who just go work, 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 and try to get things, support individual in the community, but never really knew the boundary. And I've been able to take a few of your advice and so forth, and it has tremendously allowed me to be able to balance myself and my life. But
And it
I
makes
want
it go harder for the people you want to help, right? Like, when I don't take that time for myself, I do feel burnt out and I get frustrated and I start losing perspective, or, maybe I just don't have that fight in me to the same extent. And then I go away for, a few days, and I come back and I'm like, oh yeah, ready to go. New perspective. Let me look at this case from a different angle. Maybe I really can find a way to get, my client out of the mess they've created for themselves, and keep
right.
them connected with their family. So it doesn't just help me on a personal level. I think it also helps me professionally to be there to support my clients, to give them, the 110% that they deserve.
That's wonderful. That's good, and thank you. And Jury, how about you? I know that you deal with things. You're trying to manage stuff. How are you managing?
Um, through KIP 6, I was able to therapy. Therapy has been a really, really amazing part of my journey from reintegrating back into the community.
Mm.
Um, so far, so good. I'm working. Like, for my message for anybody who's been through that type of situation, been through the system, it's simple. Don't give up. Believe in yourself. There, like, you can never give up, no matter how hard things may seem. Just keep pushing. You got to push through every adversity. And for me right now, I'm also in college, taking cybersecurity. So I feel like no matter what the system tries to put in front of you, and just, they make it seem like, yeah, you're on parole, you can't do this, you can't do that. You just got to kind of like close your eyes and don't pay attention to what's going on. But at the same time, please follow, their rules, so you don't put yourself back in Hell's Kitchen. But no, but also believe in yourself and believe in what you really want to do. Like I said, everybody has something that they really want to do. We're
Right.
good at something. And you know a person, for example, a person who's was once a street pharmacist or a drug dealer, whatever the case may be, that's a business. And if that person is also smart, if you really were to put that person in a position where they can be a successful businessman and they don't have to sell drugs. So it's all about numbers and mathematics, right? So it's just like I said, giving people chances. And for me, I'm very grateful for my experience that I went through this. And yeah, now I'm just trying to turn every negative into a positive.
Positive.
And I believe every other individual, there are individuals out there that's also trying to do the same thing. But I strongly advise that people should try therapy. It really works. It helps you understand yourself as an individual, and it also helps you during tough times. Like I went through tough times when I came home, but right now it's like I feel like it's not the end of the world. 5 years from now, I can look behind me and say, that was once a thing. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Thank you so much. And I have to say, kudos to you, man, for reaching where you are today. And it was, our pleasure to assist you and continue to support you in any way that we can. You
thank you.
know,
Thank you.
I
And thanks to
wanted,
Jordana too.
yeah, we
Yeah,
can.
no,
Yeah, you know what? It's amazing for me to hear this because when you got out and I got the message that you were out and struggling, I said you got to call Richard. If there's anybody in this world that's going to help connect you to the resources you need, it's him. And so to hear, not that I'm surprised that Keep Six is a successful organization. I know that. That's why I stand behind them. But
amazing.
to hear from you that I've known you and your family for so long, and to hear you in such a great place because of all the support that Keep Six was able to offer you and provide, it's meaningful. It's huge, and so I'm really proud of you for putting in that work. Really,
Thank you.
this is you.
Thank you
Thank you.
both. Thank
And of
you.
course, Richard, for having this available and the support because you did this as a passion project and you put your heart and soul into it. So you see it paying off again and again. It's huge.
100%,
Yeah.
and it's my pleasure. And Jordana, I'm going to ask you, please, could you please, before we go, just one last closing remark for the for viewers in our community,
Yeah.
and also I would like to be able to tell them where they can reach you at, for if they ever need a good lawyer to represent them, or they can connect with you.
Sure. I mean, I'm accessible everywhere. I've got all of my contact information on my website. Is probably the most succinct way to find me is jhgcriminallaw.com. So the contact page there with a web inquiry, telephone numbers, email addresses, and then Instagram is a really easy way to connect with me as well. I check DMs once or twice a day. I try, so just be patient. If I'm in court, can't always be on the ground, but yeah, you can connect with me there. My name is my handle. So Jordana Goldlist.
Beautiful. And your closing remark for this topic that we're discussing today. What are your closing remark and the bail reform and tough on crime policy? What would give us one message that you'd like to just put out there to the government and policymakers?
These policies have been utilized and are failing. The system is failing everyone in it. It's failing offenders, it's failing victims, it's failing the streets, it's failing the communities. It is failing to achieve what the purported or stated goal is. And so it's time to do something completely different. We've tried locking people up and hoping that fixes them, and we know it does not. So if we know that doesn't work and it's not working, we need to rethink the solution entirely.
Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
Jerry, do you have any closing remarks?
Um, I just want to say, well, thank you guys for having me first of all on this. My only thing is, like I said, is just the only way we can do better is just really get down to the bottom of the roots of everything and start from there. So I feel like it's possible, it's doable. It takes a community, right? So we all have to just come together and stand strong and really, tell the government that, like Jordana said, locking people up doesn't always solve the it's not always the answer to things. And that's something that they're used to. And I feel like, we're moving forward, we gotta find other ways and to change it, to make it, for people to be obviously there's going to be issues and problems everywhere, but let's find ways to help the youths and help the younger generation and stuff like that. So that's
Thank
what
you.
I have to say.
Thank you so much. And folks, I'm Richard Miller, the founder of Keep Six nonprofit organization. And thank you again for joining us at Empowerment to Unlock the Justice System. Stay tuned and follow us on our Instagram and our YouTube channel at Keep KEEP, the number 6 IXORG, for upcoming discussion and any one of our segments that you've missed. Again, thank you all. Jordana, Jerry, thank you again, and we'll see each other soon.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
Yeah.
everyone for
Bye,
joining
Jerry.
us.
Nice seeing you.
Bye. Nice, you too.
Bye, guys.